Roll up, roll up. It's time for my favorite part of the week. It's the Media's Live Show, episode 12. Um, got one big thing to talk about this week, as you can probably guess from my choice of image. I did catch up with Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus, and it's given me the perfect opportunity to talk about something that has been on my mind ever since I started reading the light novels for Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russia. Uh, but that'll be in the back half of the show. Um, I haven't done much this week. I took some time to play a video game for the first time in weeks. I started playing Legends of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom again while listening to uh, some of the old podcasts, some of the old Ruby podcasts. I've been revisiting them uh, this past week. That's been most of my free time, as well as working on the podcast. Obviously, late last week I uploaded the Ice Queendom podcast, and I am currently at work on the Ruby X Justice League podcast that we recorded about a week ago. That's coming along. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the week. So other than that, I wanted to let's see where should we let's start with One Piece because not a big chapter this week and not a big episode this week. It is kind of a big episode. It's the episode where uh Luffy is back in the fight. He goes Gear 5. And Bonnie sees him in Gear 5 for the first time. Toei continues to make my man look like an absolute demon. I just want to make sure that everything's working. Yeah. Uh, People have been memeing on this nameless Marine who comes face to face with Luffy from this bit that I have pulled up now. Uh, and the other thing that's been memed on is probably an adaptation mistake. And we're going to talk a lot about adaptations this week because of the Rascal situation and my thoughts on that. When you adapt to a new medium, you have to take a lot of liberties. You have to do a lot of interpretation. Uh, a lot of people had interpreted that scene where Bonnie sees Gear 5 for the first time as very bright and sunny because he's the sun god. He's the sun god Nika. Toei did not interpret it that way. It is not explicit in the manga material, and so a lot of people had it in their head just because it made more sense, and it makes more sense to me too. I'm one of them, but that's just not the direction Toei ended up taking that scene, and people are complaining about that. And there is no winning on that. There's no way to appease everyone. And I see this all the time with especially the thing I see it with the most is Alice in Wonderland, where there's like 50,000 adaptations of Alice in Wonderland. All of them use some variations on the dialogue from the book, and most of them don't really work because the strengths of the book are different from what you can do in camera or in animation, and you have to like pick and choose your battles. A lot of manga adaptations try to go as close to one for one as possible, but they can't because animation does not allow them to get as detailed as like a manga panel. You see this all the time with stuff like Invincible and My Hero Academia. These things that have like really great, highly detailed art, Berserk comes to mind as well. But then when it gets animated, they have to like stylize it a lot more, and it's already stylized. Like especially in the manga, like it's already stylized, and they had to stylize it even more just to make it look decent in animation. And there's no winning. There's no appeasing everyone. Uh, there's no telling, especially if it's an ongoing story. There's no telling like what you should and shouldn't focus on. I remember when Harry Potter was coming out, a lot of people complained about them taking stuff out of the books, and they had to because time constraints. Movies have a lot stricter time constraints than TV shows or books, so they had to like really be thorough with like what they choose to cut out, and sometimes what they choose to cut out is something that ends up being really important later on. Talking about Dobby on that end. Dobby in the books is really important. He comes in clutch in, I think it's the final book, about halfway through the final book. But the movie, when the second movie came out, the seventh book hadn't come out, and so they didn't realize how important Dobby was going to be. So they truncated a lot of his scenes and didn't have him pop up again, even though he pops up a few more times in the books. And it made that scene in the movie hit a lot less hard than it did in the books. You get this. You don't get anything as extreme as that in manga adaptations, anime manga stuff. A lot of them, especially nowadays, are tend to be really good. Uh, because and this is kind of thanks to the impact that My Hero Academia made, where it's a lot more seasonal now. Like One Piece is kind of the last of a dying breed, in that it is the last of these big, long running shonen that are constantly airing and constantly having to like kill its own pacing or take breaks or whatnot in order to keep from catching up to the manga. Like One Piece is kind of alone in that now. When it used to be standard, it used to be you either did that what One Piece and Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball, Pokemon, what all they did. Detective Conan is also part of that same thing. But Detective Conan is a little different because Detective Conan does have a lot of anime only episodes, and because it is so episodic, because there is not much of a continuous plot through that. Like they're just like, okay, this is a mystery story that we came up with. Let's have that be the next two episodes. Uh, but you'd either have that or you'd have something like Soul Eater or Trigun, where you adapt the story up to a certain point and then completely take it in your own direction. Now, Full Metal Alchemist 2003 also did this famously. Uh, and a lot of that, it makes the ending feel rushed because it's not like the intended ending. It's not what the author originally planned for. And it shows, like you can tell, you can feel it. Like I have not read Soul Eater, but I could tell that the Soul Eater ending or the ending for the anime was kind of garbage, and it was garbage because it was anime only. The same thing with Full Metal Alchemist. Like I do enjoy the Full Metal Alchemist 2003 back half, um, but even as a kid watching that, 2003, 2004, 2005, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, having never read the manga, having not even known that the manga existed, I didn't know that these anime were based on Japanese comics. I didn't know that at the time, but I could feel it. Like I could feel that there is a change in quality in the writing and the animation and the art and the designs of the characters, and that something just felt off. But nowadays, we don't live in that world. We live in a world of much, much better adaptations like My Hero Academia, like Demon Slayer, Mob Psycho. What are some other big ones that have come out? JJK, where the anime are actually improving on the source material because they're showing everything that is in the source material and expanding where the story could actually benefit from expansion, and not like cutting anything important in there. Because they're seasonal, they can fix a lot of the pacing issues that come across with things like Naruto Shippuden, One Piece, early Bleach. Bleach has really horrible pacing, uh, but Bleach Thousand Year Blood War is like a 10 out of 10 series because of it being seasonal. Even though like it doesn't even necessarily have to be seasonal at that point, because the Bleach manga ended so long ago. Like they could have just been like, okay, we're gonna let this cook for a few years, and then we're gonna just continuously pump it out for 100 episodes or however long it ends up being. Um, but they didn't. They're taking their time. They're building that interest. They're building that engagement and making Thousand Year Blood War a 4 year long experience for us. One Piece would absolutely benefit from that. I'm super excited for the remake that is going to be on Netflix. I think it's airing later this year. Um, because One Piece deserves better pacing. Like a lot of the issues with the One Piece adaptation is with the pacing, how they do drag things out. It's like an episode two or three episodes ago where they adapted literally just 5 pages of manga into 20 minutes, and it was awful. Um, but that's the sacrifice you have to make. And One Piece, the main story, it won't ever fix itself. Like it's not gonna like we did have that 6 month hiatus, which I think it did benefit from, but it's never going to like go seasonal because there's no actual incentive for it to go seasonal. One Piece is the biggest manga of all time, one of the biggest comic books of all time, all around the world. It makes tons of money, gets tons of viewership every week. There's no incentive for Toei to switch gears with it. Which is also why they never switched gears with Dragon Ball Super when it was airing a couple years ago. Robert said Dandadan is also doing a really good job of expanding the manga. I've not read the manga, but yes, I've heard very good things about Dandadan's adaptation. I think Dandadan is great. I think it's one of the best series to come out in the past few years. I think it's actually one of the better anime of all time. Like it's probably in my top 30 now. We'll talk about Dandadan here in a bit. We'll talk about that next because I got some thoughts on that too. I watched that episode this week and it was very good. Um, if I'm a little low energy today, it's because for one, I bit my tongue a couple days ago and my tongue is still sore. Uh, and two, it's really hot outside, and I went on like a 3 hour walk, and I was like I was so just tired and exhausted and sweaty that I almost canceled the stream. I almost canceled the stream so I could just lay down in my air conditioned room wearing nothing but boxers and just like cool off. Uh, but yeah. So that's really all I have to say about the anime. That like you're not gonna please everyone. There's always going to be corners to cut. There's always going to be sacrifices made anytime you adapt from one medium to the next, because different mediums have different strengths. Like you can't do a one to one. You can't ever do a true one to one adaptation across mediums. Uh, there's no real point to even try. As far as the One Piece chapter goes, a lot of people are saying that minor. I'm not gonna get into spoilers. Not a whole lot happened in the newest chapter. It was more like Rock's trying to recruit Harold, the world government trying to goad Harold into killing Rocks, which we already know that's not how that plays out. I really doubt Harold is gonna show up to God Valley. I really doubt that. And obviously, we know that the Elbaf never joins the world government, so we know that end of the deal never happens. Um, but bit of storytelling 101 stuff here. You don't have to have your characters change in a story, but you do have to give them the opportunity to change. Because them refusing to change can also be a character arc. That is also part of characterization. Um, Talk about that all the time with, like Superman adaptations and stuff. And I've talked about that linked with Batman when I was playing the Arkham games on stream a couple years ago. Uh, like we already know, like it's kind of a pointless cliffhanger to leave off a chapter because we already know that's not what happens. So I'm not sure where they're going with this. I do know a lot of people are being like, "Oh, Shaki's the true treasure of Pirate Island. She's going to be the instigator of the God Valley incident." Like, I hope people are wrong on that because that would be a retcon. Like, we already know that what the government stole was the devil fruit, the Uu no Mi mythical model as your dragon. Like, that was already stated back on like the Egghead Island arc when we first got a glimpse of God Valley. That like they were there for the devil fruit. Now, like Shaki could have also been captured, and that would explain why Gloriosa joins the Rocks Pirates. Because, as far as this chapter goes, Gloriosa hasn't joined them yet. But so that would explain why Gloriosa is there, and it would be in line with the way the world government operates. That they kidnap her alongside this devil fruit and be like, "Oh, be slave or whatever, be my 15th wife." Or be Saint Garling's seventh wife or whatever. It would also explain why Roger comes in, because we don't really know if Roger and Rox have actual beef or not. We've cut back and forth between the two crews a few times now in this flashback, and they haven't really talked about each other. So that would explain that. Um, but as far as like the treasure of Hachinosu, it's the devil fruit, and that's I actually really like Big Mom. I like Charlotte Linlin. I like this era of her because she's locked in. Uh, she's the only one in the crew that's like an actual pirate, and I love her for it. People be sleeping on Big Mom for real. People vastly underestimate her because of the whole wedding cake thing. Like she's a monster. She's terrifying. She's the third strongest member of the Rocks crew. Like she's stronger than Shiki. She's stronger than Silver Axe. She's stronger than the mob boss guy. Like she's a monster at this point. She's already like by this point in the story, she should already be like one of the most legendary pirates of all time because this is pretty much her prime. This is and we know from the Ace light novel that like she was the first person to become an emperor to settle down and start conquering territory and rule it like a king. Uh, and that like Roger was scared of her and stuff. Like, put some respect on Big Mom's name. Uh, that's all I have to say about One Piece. Let's move on to Don Don. I could not find a high quality image for this episode. Evil Eye is back, and I like it. I like it a lot. I like that it is kind of making Gigi pay for being a good person and this how rough that is because he is such a good guy and he does like genuinely want to like fix the evil eye. Like he genuinely wants to like help the evil eye out and play with him and basically do talk no jutsu to the evil eye, but he's just not strong enough yet. Uh, and the people around him aren't really strong enough to deal with it yet. And it's this very desperate situation. It also addresses like the fact that uh, they have Turbo Granny in the cat doll thing, and Okaroon has not really asked her about her other powers. Like Turbo Granny is insanely powerful, especially when she was in the tunnel with the crab spirit guy helping her out. Like Okaru, like that should have been the first thing out of Okaru's mind. Like, wait, doesn't Turbo Granny do a lot more than just run really fast and kick really hard? Shouldn't I be trying to like tap into that if I want to fight the evil eye? And I liked the idea, like the combat rhythm that Turbo Granny explains. That like Okarun is basically this one trick pony. He just powers up and dashes in and smashes into things. Whereas like Acro, Silky, and Evil Eye, they're a lot more acrobatic. They do a lot more code switching in the middle of battle, where they'll flow from one move to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. They'll do like four moves in the time that it takes Okarun to like charge up one. Okarun is a lot like me playing Elden Ring, where he just charges up that heavy R, two hands a weapon, and charges up that heavy R2 and hopes for a critical hit. Uh, Whereas Acro, Silky, and Evil Eye, they are dex builds, stringing together combos and status effects and stuff. Uh, what else happened this episode? The more cutesy romance. I like Momo's friends. I like how into Okarun they are. They are championing that. That was a big fun thing for me in season one when I think it was when Gigi was first introduced, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm living with Momo now," and all the girls are like super into him. But the second he starts like flirting with Momo or whatever, the one gal chick with the tan steps in like, nope, she is Okaruns. Like, yeah, you go, girl. I like that. I like when uh characters are ride or die for each other. I talked about this before, but one of my favorite novels is Dracula, and my favorite aspect of Dracula is just how like on board everyone is for each other. Uh, Quincy, if half of America is as good as you, then that country will be a world power by the end of the century. I love how Dracula just has a cowboy in the book, just inexplicably, and written in a way that tells you that Bram Stoker has never once spoken to an American in his life. Uh, I don't think Bram Stoker ever spoke to a non-British person in his life because the way he writes all the Romani people and the way he writes Van Helsing is equally cartoonish. It's hilarious. I kind of people will try to cancel stuff like that, but I'm like, no, this is a cultural artifact. This is what makes it art, man. Like it's art because it's a form of personal expression. It is the story and these ideas filtered through the lens of a singular person with his own like perspective on things and his own like idea for those ideas. Like that's what makes it art. Speaking of art, I think we should move into the other show I've been raving about these past few weeks. There's no way I will be your lover unless episode 7 continues to be hilarious. Um, Renako Amaori is still the funniest character I have seen in years. This show makes me smile all the time, nonstop. I love these idiots. I love their like stupid game of one-upsmanship. I love the competition between Mai and Satsuki and how like I love the it's so toxic. It's so toxic, man. That like they had this wager like, oh, if I win, I get to marry Renako. Oh, but if I win, I get to marry Renako. And Renako's like, don't I get a say in this? And they're like, nope. Uh, but yeah, the rivalry between Mai and Satsuki is coming to a head, and we're getting a lot more Ajisai as well. Ajisai is very much catching the feels for Renako. Um, this is definitely like a Yuri harem show, and I think that is a hilarious thing to be in this context with this character because like ain't no way. Ain't no way she got the energy to deal with all this. She ain't got the social batteries to handle a harem. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Said before that like harems will always be inferior to shows that build up like a singular dynamic, but like this isn't a drama. This isn't a true romance. This isn't all cutesy and stuff. This is hilarious. This is a comedy, and the more uncomfortable, the better. With that done, let's get on to the main article. Rascal does not dream of a nightingale is the arc that just concluded. I think this was the best arc in Rascal, at least since season one. Hold on. Just want to make sure my door was closed. They're being loud upstairs. Uh, Let me pull up. I want to get the names of the light novel and stuff right. So the article today is that light novel adaptations feel different, and this is something I really picked because I had never read a light novel until last year. Does not dream. All right. So light novels, anime, and manga are like conflated together a lot, but manga first and foremost is comics. Like it is Japanese comics, and they are a visual medium first and foremost. Uh, and part of that is having the artistic chops and the character designs to tell as much of the story visually as possible. A lot of comics, especially nowadays, fail at this because they just cover everything in word bubbles, speech bubbles rather, and it takes away from the strengths of that medium. I think comics are one of the hardest mediums to actually do well in because there's so much that goes into it and you don't have the strength that other stuff does. Like prose will always be better at detailing, world building, internal monologue, characterization, everything like that. Because in a novel, you can explain the backstory of a tree branch. Uh, that never actually happens in Lord of the Rings, but that's the meme. But in a film or piece of television, you have to try to like get all that across in a single glance. Uh, on the flip side, though, visual mediums, you can tell a lot about a character from a glance. You don't have to describe them with words and try to paint a picture of them using words. You can just show them. And especially if it's live action where everybody looks slightly different, because everybody looks different. You can be like you can more easily follow like who's who and keep track of even background characters and stuff. Cats, the Broadway musical, is actually very famous about like how each cat has like a unique design and how each one is like constantly doing something in the background, and you can like watch Cats 50 different times on Broadway and come with a completely different experience because you just focus in on a different cat the entire time. and they're always doing something. That gets a little busy though. Uh, and you see this with this same sort of principle at least in play with like comics and manga. I remember I have not read the comic, but I remember hearing about a comic. I think it was a Fantastic Four comic back in the '60s, where they like go to a baseball game or whatever, and there's a photographer there, and someone was like, "Hey, there's this photographer here, and he looks really a lot like Peter Parker. Is it Peter Parker?" And Stanley was like, "Yeah, that's Peter Parker. That's Spider-Man. Just there in the background. Good eye, you caught it." Um, I haven't gotten that feeling with any light novel adaptation, and it's because they are, even though they do have like a lot of overlap with manga, there's a lot of manga that adapt light novels, and there's a visual element in light novels. Like there's occasionally illustrations that are super highly detailed illustrations. There's still a bit of same face syndrome, or same overall aesthetic syndrome, and part of it is the stylization process. So everybody looks different in live action, but the more you stylize it, the more similar people will look. Which is why there's even a concept like, oh, the generic anime protagonist look, because even though every Japanese person looks different, when you stylize every Japanese person to the same degree, then they start looking more and more similar. And that is the frame of reference that every Japanese writer and artist has, is other Japanese people. And uh, there's only so many variations you can do without like completely changing the art style or going super cartoonish extreme like One Piece does. Like there's only so much you can change the silhouette. And another thing that makes it really difficult is the outfit and the hairstyle changes. Like people in real life will wear different clothes and have different outfits. You don't really get that with a lot of things that are built around a visual medium, where they'll have like a distinct silhouette, a distinct hairstyle, a distinct outfit, a design, what I call like a design ethos. Like I talked about this in the Ruby podcast, talk about Ruby, and we'll be talking about that in upcoming podcasts that we're recording. The next one we record, we're going to be talking all about this. Um, where like even if Ruby is in a different art style or wearing a different outfit, so long as it follows the same design ethoses, it'll still read as Ruby Rose. You don't really get that with a lot of light novel adaptations because they are written in prose first and foremost. The art itself is very stylized, and they end up, a lot of the characters end up looking very similarly to each other. And and Rascal is very guilty about this. Sakata has a type. Mai, Kirishima, and Shoko all look very similarly to each other, as does Kaede and the Kohai girl, Koga, I think is her name. Uh, but I think Rascal is creative in that it does something like that, and also like there's personality and diversity. There's personality and like outfit changes. Like Mai always looks stylish. Kaede always looks cutesy. Futaba always looks like she's very modest despite being very appealing. Um, but it's not just visual indicators. It's also just the way they're written. Light novels tend to be a lot wordier because, going back to what I said earlier, comics shouldn't have too many speech bubbles. But in prose, you can have as much dialogue as you want. Uh, no, there's this kind of adage, show don't tell. It's very common. Everyone's heard it. A lot of people get it wrong because, especially in prose, you can't do show don't tell. You can't do show don't tell in prose. because you show by telling. You can't just. I mean, yeah, there are pulps and light novels and stuff that have illustrations. There are books that obviously have illustrations to show things, so that they don't have to describe them necessarily within the text. But for the most part, every visual indicator will be done with words. Everything in prose is done with words. That's the point of prose as a medium. Uh, and there's a strength to that. There's a strength that there is no superior medium because they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Uh, like I said, the reason why comics and manga are so like difficult to do well is because they don't have as many tools at their disposal. They have like the worst of both worlds when it comes to written and visual medium. Uh, which is why there's even though there's a lot of good comic books, there's so few truly great comics. It's one of the reasons why like even though anime adaptations of manga tend to go for the one for one thing, when it comes to superhero shows, superhero comics were not written with that in mind. They were written to be a lot shorter, cheaper, more disposable, more like something that you can't really just adapt one for one. They were not made with anime in mind. Whereas a lot of manga are made with anime in mind, especially nowadays. Famously, One Piece author Ichiro Oda, he completely changed Chopper's design because of the voice actress. Uh, he wanted Chopper to look, a bit more monstrous as he got older. He was chubby at first, like still kind of cute, but mostly like kind of weird looking, kind of cool looking. But then as soon as he heard Chopper's voice actress, who is the same voice actress who does Pikachu and Pokemon, he made Chopper the mascot because of that. So there's this feedback loop as well, where like a person is working on a comic book, and then the cartoon comes out, and they see the cartoon, and they like the cartoon, so they start trying to incorporate stuff from the cartoon into the manga. See this a lot with superhero shows. Harley Quinn and the current backstory of Mr. Freeze, the post-crisis backstory for Mr. Freeze, were both inventions of Batman the Animated Series. They're made in order to work within a TV medium, and the people who were writing Batman at the time loved that show, as they should. That show is one of the best ever. And so they started incorporating that into the comics. Not sure if anything like that's going on with light novels. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't read enough light novels to pick up on anything intricate like that. Like I've read a lot of comics. I've seen a lot of superhero shows. I've read a lot of manga. I've watched a lot of anime, uh, but I haven't read enough light novels to like pick up on that sort of those sorts of changes in adaptation. Uh, but kind of getting back to the story of Rascal itself, I do really like the show. It's had its ups and downs. Uh, the idea of having social anxieties manifest as supernatural occurrences is kind of a golden opportunity. Uh, if I do have a problem, it's that it's dragged out so long that they've repeated a lot of the same ideas a couple times now, and that's why I wanted to pull up the title list. So you had Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, which used like the Schrodinger's cat, kind of gets misinterpreted a lot. The quantum probability isn't an actual thing. Like the Schrodinger's cat is more of a thought experiment where like, okay, you keep a cat in a box for however long, you can make assumptions and stuff based on other observations, but until you observe something, you can't confirm it. Except you kind of can, because there's more to observing something than just like opening the box. Like you could tell the cat is dead without opening the box, just because like, oh, if it really hasn't eaten or drink anything in 3 days, it's obviously dead. If it starts to smell like it's dead, it's almost certainly dead. If it stops making any noise for extended periods of time, it's certainly dead. Uh, but like I said, the Schrodinger's cat works better as a thought experiment than an actual like scientific thing. I wish they went more with. I wish the show went more with the emotional side of that rather than trying to like find a BS pseudoscience explanation for everything. Which is actually why I like this season. I like the Santa Claus girl Kirishima. I like that she's literally just passing these anxieties out like Christmas presents, and that it all reflects like what they want to be. Uh, but yeah, that was like the story of Mai being invisible because she was so desperate to like blend in to her like high school life that she literally vanished. Uh, they had Rascal Does Not Dream of Petite Devil Kohai. This was Laplace's Devil, another thought experiment about infinite probability and what if like someone could control that and it manifested as like a time loop because of Kohai girl. I think her name is Koga. I can't remember. Um, she's in the newest episode. Like they talked to her in the newest episode. I can't ever remember her name. Uh, she's like going through this loop because she's trying to like find this pathway that makes everyone happy, only to find out that you can't make everyone happy. There's always going to be someone who gets hurt when love is involved, especially when like what happens to her, she falls in love with Sakata, and Sakata's too in love with Mai to reciprocate, and she ends up just hurting herself trying to play along and play dumb with this. Then he had Rascal Does Not Dream of Logical Witch. That was Futsaba's arc, where she got split into two uh, because she wanted to do her science club thing, but also wanted to like be there for her friends, and she was in a one-sided romantic uh, relationship with Kanemi, Sakata's friend, and so sad that like that never plays out. Like uh, he's still with the girl he was with in season one, and Futaba is still alone. I do love Futaba and Sakata's relationship. Like their platonic relationship is one of the highlights of the show for me, and they are like one of the best like opposite sex platonic friendships of all time. Then you have Rascal Does Not Dream of a Syscon Idol. That was the Freaky Friday stuff with Mai and her sister. Uh, my sister wanted to be more like Mai, and Mai wanted to be more like her sister, and they swapped around. Then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Sister Home Alone. This is top three arcs for me. It's like this, Bunny Girl Senpai, and then the newest one, Nightingale, are the three best arcs for me. This is the Kaede arc, where find out that she lost her memories, and then as she's like trying to improve herself and trying to like step out more and try to like be someone who doesn't need Sakata anymore, she gets her memories back, and Sakata just is devastated because he's like he feels like they're two different people, and that this is just the dim-witted Kaede is getting trampled over because of this. Um, then you got Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl. That was the first movie. And Rascal Does Not Dream of His First Love. That was also those two were combined together for the first movie. It's all basically one arc. Uh, this show should stay away from time travel. That's all I'm going to say about that. Rascal Does Not Dream of a sister venturing out. I felt like this was just an extension of uh, Sister Home Alone. It's the continuation of Kaede's arc as she like goes to school and stuff. It's fine. And then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Knapsack Kid. That is my least favorite one because I still have no idea what that was even about. Like why it was happening. Then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Lost Singer. That was the start of this season. And I liked how subtle that was. Like, this is probably like top 5 or 6 arc for me. Uh, just because, like, how subtle it was. Like, you can almost, like, divorce that story from all the supernatural shenanigans and it still work exactly the way it did. But then it wouldn't be Rascal. And then Rascal Does Not Dream of Nightingale. Um, I just saw what the next title is, and I'm a little worried. Rascal Does Not Dream of a Student. Please don't go that route, Rascal. Don't go that route, Sakata. Just don't. Uh, but yeah, this really played into. It got a little confusing at the end because it referenced a lot of stuff that happened in Knapsack Kid, and that's my least favorite arc by a long shot. So a lot of that stuff was like not committed to memory. Uh, but the idea of like seeing someone you care about go through stuff and not being able to help them is a relatable thing. Like that's where the show I think is at its strongest, where it takes these relatable anxieties and does something with them. Like the weaker arcs like Knapsack Kid and I would say like Siscon Idol, um, even something like the Dream of a Dreaming Girl. Like those aren't really relatable anxieties. Like I can certainly empathize with like Shoko being terminally ill and being so obsessed with like desperately trying to like reach a future where she's happy that she ends up like throwing herself into the future and starts like uh using that future to manipulate the past. That's her whole deal. Um like I could certainly empathize with someone who has those anxieties, but I've never been there. I've never uh been like jealous of my siblings, so I can't really relate to Siscon Idol. Um, I'm not really a celebrity. I'm a minor channel with a minor niche audience, so I can't really like, and I never really cared to be big on YouTube, so I can't really empathize with like the Lost Singer, but I can empathize with like not necessarily hurting someone, but like not being able to help someone who is hurting, someone who cares about you, and trying to make amends and hurting yourself in the process. Like that's something I can see happening. How long have I been going? I haven't been even going an hour. Uh, what else? What else? Kind of forgot where I was going with that. Light novels, light novel, light novels. I do think that it does remind me, get kind of getting back to light novels and the broad strokes. something that Hitchcock actually said. This was in regards to Dial M for Murder, his classic film from the one of his many classic films from the 50s. Where like when the creative juices are running dry, find a hot play and shoot it. Theater and film use a lot of the same strengths, so they translate well one into the other, without having to change a whole lot. Uh, and that was something that Hitchcock often did. He would take a play that was like hot at the time, and then he would just scoop up the rights and shoot it. Dial M for Murder was one such example. Uh, and that's how I feel about light novel adaptations, where it's like, oh man, just I'm the director of Studio Cloverworks, and I'm having a hard time like figuring out what my studio is gonna do for the next year. Oh, this light novel series is pretty popular, and there's a couple volumes, certainly enough to make a series out of it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's quickly read it and go nuts with it. Uh, and because of the like start stop nature of light novels, they lend themselves to seasonal television a lot better. Like I've noticed that there tends to be a not really with Rascal. I think Rascal's light novels are just a lot shorter than average. Either that or they cut out a lot. I don't know. Um, but I know with both Alia sometimes hides her feelings in Russian and Makaine, they had a very consistent like 3 episodes per light novel. And with Rascal, it's more like anywhere between 2 and 3. Never just one though. It's always either 2 or 3 episodes per light novel per story arc. And that's actually like a really good framework structure to go with. Now, the weaknesses of that obviously is that light novels are prose, and there's a lot you can do with a light novel that you simply can't with an anime adaptation. Like I'm trying to finish up Alia's Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian, Volume 10. I read Chapter 6 this week. I think I have not actually checked to see how many chapters got translated. I think the translations are done. I think they got them all out now. So I'm starting to read that again. Uh, in Chapter 6, there's this whole extended sequence where Alia's in her own head. Like she's following Masachika, Takeshi, and Hikaru. Takeshi had just confessed to Sayaka, the girl with glasses from season 1. If you haven't read the light novels, you might be surprised that Sayaka is a very important character throughout the whole thing, and can only continue to become more and more important as the series goes on, and she becomes like one of Alia's best friends. And Takeshi is the bald guy who hangs out with Masachika. And the whole like ever since volume 5, it's been building this like cutesy romance angle that is one sided, but like Sayaka is also not like super opposed to it. But at the same time she kinda is, because like it's not something she ever thought about, and it's catching her off guard because Takeshi just confessed out of nowhere. And Alia's in her own head being like, when should I confess? Like, and she's doing the same thing that Miku did in Quince, where she's putting these qualifiers, these prerequisites to her confession, and it's gonna bite her. Like the fact that she's like, oh, as soon as we win the student council election, then I'll confess. It's the first time in the whole series where I'm starting to genuinely think they're not gonna win. Uh, and that this is going to put a damper on things for some extra spicy drama. But this whole scene, she's like, weighing her options, think about like, how does Masachika feel about her? Like, what's her competition like? She is right to identify Nonoa as her most pressing rival at the moment. Um, because Nonoa's scheming something. Nonoa's been scheming something since volume 8. She been cooking. She been cooking against Alia. Um, but the true tragic irony is that as she's like listing out all these romantic rivals and stuff, and she's like, okay, Yuki's out of the race. Like she's a sister. That's obviously not going to happen. That's a big relief because she would have been my biggest obstacle. She's still technically my biggest obstacle because I'm. Putting the stipulation on the confession that I had to beat her, yada yada yada. Ayano doesn't count because she's just his servant. Uh, she doesn't actually see him that way, so she's out. Sayaka doesn't care about him. She's out. Nonoa, I'm not sure what she is getting at or where she's coming from. I should be a little more suspicious of her, like especially like after she flirted with him at the amusement park. That was in that was actually in volume 9.5, I believe. Um, one of the bonus chapters. Uh, so Alia is suspicious of Nonoa, which is good because Masachika does not suspect a thing. Um, which is a bit of dramatic irony because usually it's Masachika that is super suspicious of Nonoa all the time to the point of ridiculousness. Meanwhile, Ali is like, oh no, she's just such a sweet girl. Masachika's like, no, you don't get it. You didn't know her in middle school. I know what she's about. She's a sociopath. Usually it's Masachika that's being super cautious around her, but the tragic irony is that she doesn't list Masha, and there's still several Chekhov's guns involving Masha. Like back in Volume 7, Masachika promised to take her out on a date at some point. That still hasn't happened. Alia still doesn't know that Masachika and Sakun are the same person. She just it's there's so much dramatic irony in Alia. I love it. And of course, she doesn't know that Masachika knows Russian, and that he only knows Russian because of Masha, or that he only learned to speak it fluently because of Masha. It's actually explained in Volume 5 that he already knew a lot of Russian before he met her, because of his grandfather watching Russian films. Um, but anyway, the point I'm making here is that I have no idea how they're gonna adapt something like that. uh there's a really big important moment for Yuki in volume 8 where she's like in a changing room and examines herself and starts getting like really super self-conscious about her petite frame and about like how Masachika treats her like a child, how everyone is treating her like a child, and she wants to grow up, she wants to be dependable, she wants to be someone that Masachika doesn't have to worry about. That's why she's so determined to win this competition. She wants to prove that she doesn't need him to succeed. She wants to set him free, he wants to set her free, and that is what causes all their arguments in Volume 9 and in the first part of Volume 10. Tons of dramatic irony. But that same monologue is where we get the confirmation that, like, Yuki has never been in love. Yuki has never felt sexual attraction to anyone. Like, it's not just that she's never been romantically involved with anyone. She's never even felt the physical side of the attraction. And she's chalking that up as another sign of her own immaturity. She thinks that like being attracted to someone is a sign of maturity, and she's getting super self-conscious about that. How do you adapt that in a visual medium? Like, how do you adapt that anxiety that comes with like your your entire personality, your heart, and your physical body all being on the same page, and that page not being where your mind wants to be at? Like, how do you adapt something like that? How do you adapt something like, um, trying to think of another example from I think of an example from like a novel that I haven't seen get adapted. Lord of the Rings actually ran into this problem. There we go. And here's a really big example of what I'm talking about, like the difference between prose and film as a medium. Like Lord of the Rings, super well written books. The movies, extremely well made. Some of the best movies ever made. The movies are not able to truly capture how terrifyingly powerful the One Ring is and how it whittles away at your will, how it eats away at your very soul, weighing you down more and more with each step you take. And how like the ring is itself a character, and throughout the entire journey, it's trying to figure out Frodo. The hobbits, the reason why they're able to resist the ring for so long is because the hobbits came after the time of Sauron. Sauron was not familiar with the hobbits as existing until Bilbo Baggins found the ring. So he's been spending all this time, decades and decades and decades and decades, festering in Bilbo's mind and then festering in Frodo's mind, trying to figure them out. Trying to figure out like some way, something to tempt him with. How do you tempt a hobbit? They want for nothing. They are such humble folk, such simple folk. All they want to do is sit around and eat bread and smoke pipe weed and drink ale all day. Like how do you tempt someone like that to cause the world ruin? Like humans, they're easy. They just want power. Even someone as noble and good and passionate and just the best guy ever, like Boromir, he can be driven to madness because he's so desperate to protect his people. The ring is able to figure out Boromir without Boromir even touching it because the hearts of men are so easily swayed. Gandalf wants to protect people. You know, he wants to guide people. The ring has Gandalf figured out because Sauron just has Gandalf figured out from just the lived experience, from just the history that they have together. And same thing with Galadriel. Galadriel instantly knows exactly what the One Ring is going to even tempt her with. The ultimate power. In the place of a Lord, you shall have a queen, the benevolent and terrifying in all her evil might. I can't remember what she actually says. But like the One Ring is is so powerful that it's able to figure out these people so easily, but can't figure out the hobbits. It can't figure out the hobbits because the hobbits are such simple folk. They want so little in life that like it struggles throughout the whole trilogy trying to figure out what it can do, what it can offer to make Frodo break. And it finally figures it out at the 11th hour. It finally figures out Frodo wants to carry this burden. What if I convinced him that this isn't going to work? The only way to be sure that Sauron would never get the ring is to just keep it. Just keep it. Keep the burden forever, Frodo. Keep me around your neck like a noose for the rest of your existence. Because that's the only way Sauron can win. That's the only way that Sauron can convince someone like Frodo to keep the ring. Make it feel more and more like a burden that he is going to be responsible for his entire life. That's the lie. That doesn't really come across in the movies like it does in the books. I think that was one of the best little rants I've been on in the 12-week history of this live show. Uh, I think that might actually be one of the highlights of my entire channel. Just I've been wanting to find an excuse to talk about that. I even alluded to this in the podcast we recorded for Justice League, where like no, it was the Ice Queen podcast because I mentioned how like what would negative Ruby be like, because Ruby's very similar to Frodo. Like what if Ruby's whole thing was like a Frodo thing where like, oh, she has to keep this burden forever. Like what if that was the negative aspect of Ruby that would manifest through the nightmare if she were to get infected instead of Weiss. Uh I just didn't, because that podcast was just already going for so long, and we were just going with the flow and I wasn't by myself. I wasn't able to like really get into the nitty gritty of like why I think the books just have a lot more to work with when it comes to displaying the One Ring's power and influence. Whereas the movies, they just don't have that luxury. They have other strengths. Like the battles in the books are kind of lame. It's like, oh, the Gimli killed two, and Legolas killed three, and they got in formation and they charged through the orc line, and but then in the movies you actually get to see these battles play out, and it's epic and awesome, and it's so much better than the book in those regards, because film is just a much easier medium to do stuff like that with. Anime has strength that manga and light novels don't because of voice actors. Voice actors and music help lend themselves to the scene a lot. But therein also lies the interpretive nature. Um, Kind of a random side tangent. There's that new movie out, Fixed by Genndy Tartakovsky. It's apparently something he's been trying to like get greenlit since 2008. Uh, and it's a vulgar adult animated cartoon movie about a dog who like gets fixed. Uh, I have not seen it. I've not actually watched any clips from it. I've seen like bits of it while scrolling through Twitter. The main dog in that movie, I can't help but imagine Dom DeLuise's voice. Dom DeLuise, he was in a lot of the Don Bluth films. He was in like almost every single Don Bluth film as that sort of character. I am scared to actually watch the clips because I know it's not Dom DeLuise. Because I'm pretty sure Dom DeLuise. Yeah, because Dom DeLuise has been dead since 2009. So there's no way it's Dom DeLuise. But that's just the how I if I were like if it were a manga or a comic book that I was reading, uh that's the voice that would pop in my head when I see that character design. I think Dom DeLuise. And it's not Dom DeLuise, so that I feel like that's gonna take me out of it. Like what was it? It was I had this reaction to Go Go Loser Ranger, Ranger Reject, because I was reading the manga from day one, and I had in my head that this is what these characters sound like. And then when the anime came out, none of the characters sounded anything like I imagined them. And that's not anyone's fault because the person who had control over the casting decisions obviously had a very different idea of what these characters should sound like. Now there's some times where you just get right on the money. All Might should sound like Chris Sabat. There's no other English voice actor I could think of that could like embody someone who looks like All Might. I think like Luffy's voice actress in the Japanese dub, original Japanese. I think she's the perfect Luffy. Like that's who I hear when I see Luffy, and that's been who I hear when I read Luffy, even before I started watching the anime. Back when I had only watched the English dub or seen like bits of the manga. I still just that because the voice fits the character so well. Um, and obviously like music choices. I'm not a musically inclined person, so I can only imagine like the bits of music I've already listened to filling the scene. And the person who is actually musically talented, who is doing the music for these shows, they're gonna obviously have to do something very different, if for no other reason than copyright reasons. Uh, so that's what I'm talking about, like with the interpretive nature of adaptations and how you can't really please everyone. This gets even more extreme with comic book adaptations because Unlike manga, comic characters tend to have dozens and dozens of writers working on them throughout their long history. I give you a little preview of I just saw something. I just saw a cute tweet. I have to send this to I have to send this to the podcast chat. I had to at least make sure that Coop sees this. Where was I? Sorry, I'm watching the VOD again. I can't remember what I was talking about. Okay, yeah, comic book adaptations. Uh, Little preview of the next podcast that'll be uploaded. Uh, I may or may not have called Lex Luthor a nothing character. And that's not like entirely true, obviously. Lex Luthor is very popular and a lot of people love him. But a lot of people have very specific ideas about Lex Luthor that do not necessarily reflect Lex Luthor's long storied history as a comic book supervillain. So much of what we think we know about Lex Luthor does not come from his original comic book runs. It comes from things that happened way later. If you think Lex Luthor is a billionaire philanthropist who has this very high public face, congratulations. Everything you know about Lex Luthor comes from the late 80s. Lex Luthor was originally just a mad scientist supervillain who would occasionally like use death rays and robots to fight Superman. And then in the Silver Age, he started wearing like power armor that would shoot red solar radiation. There's a lot of Superman stuff that does not come from the comics. If you imagine the Superman symbol, the S as like the symbol of the House of L, or if you imagine Krypton as like this prog rock album cover with crystal technology, that was created whole cloth for the 1978 film. That was nowhere in the comics before then. If you think Superman's main weakness is kryptonite, that does not originally come from the comics. Kryptonite is an invention of the Superman radio drama that was then later incorporated into the comics. Way later. Superman's main weakness for the comics for a very long time was red solar radiation. That was his primary weakness. That's what like supervillains like Lex Luthor and the Ultra Humanite and Brainiac would fire at him. If you think of Superman going on a journey in order to learn how to control his powers as a teenager, that is also an invention of I want to say the Bronze Age of Superman comics. I might be wrong on that. Uh, if you think Lana Lang and Lois Lane are Superman's only loves, well, that wasn't really the case. There was another character in between there whose initials were also LL, and it wasn't Lex Luthor. It's just bizarre that so many of the most important people in Superman's life happen to have the same initials. um, but the Superman is such a character that he's been so mythologized. Like everyone has kind of the same ideas about like Superman's origins and how he should be written, but none of that comes from any specific source. It's actually like an amalgamation of like four different sources. It's oh, here's another big one about Superman. If you think Superman can fly, that's an invention from the cartoons. Superman originally didn't fly. He could leap very far. He could jump high. Uh It was Max Fleischer who gave him the ability to fly so that they didn't have to animate him running and jumping all the time. Uh, so yeah, there's so much about Superman that is just we kind of take for granted that does not come from the Superman comics, and that's part of like the mythologized like amalgamated version of Superman that everyone has in their heads. Same thing with most comic book characters anyway. Batman, same deal. Alfred came later. Robin came way earlier than you would think. Like Batman had only been around for like 9 months before Robin was put into the picture, and Robin never really went away after that in the comics. Um, the whole I think I've said this before that like Under the Red Hood and Winter Soldier became so important and such big deals for their respective characters that now when a Captain America adaptation introduces Bucky or a Batman adaptation introduces Jason Todd, you're just like watching the clock waiting for them to die so that they can come back as a supervillain. But like Bucky Barnes was canonically dead for like 40 years. And Jason Todd not dead as long, but like a good solid 16, 17 years. Jason Todd was dead where they didn't have plans to bring them back. They were dead. They were dead. They were so dead that it was like a sacred cow to like that like you weren't allowed to bring them back. But then in 2005, both of those characters got brought back at the same time in a major case of who was copying off of whose homework there, John Wicknick and uh, Ed Brubaker. Which one of you two actually came up with the idea, and which one of you copied the other? Because one of these stories happening is a choice. Both of these stories happening is a trend. Both of these stories happening at the exact same time. That's a little weird. That makes me think someone was cheating off of someone's homework. Um, yeah, yeah, a lot of superhero comic books were not made with TV in mind. They don't have pacing that lends itself to TV. They don't have story arcs that lend themselves to TV, and so every superhero adaptation has as being like an amalgamated version of the character to some regard. Whereas manga and light novel adaptations and animation tend to be a lot more one to one, with a lot less creative liberties. Still, creative liberties taken, and a lot of times, especially back in the day, but nowhere near as much as like with Batman the animated series or Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes or Justice League Unlimited. A lot of things that go into making a show, and a lot of things that go into making an adaptation, and you can't really make everyone happy. You'll always have people that complain. Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest movie trilogies ever made. Is one of the greatest stories ever put to film, and you still get people that are like, "Oh, Peter Jackson ruined Lord of the Rings forever because he didn't have Tom fucking Bombadil." Like I enjoy the Tom Bombadil chapter in Fellowship of the Ring, but like I can do without it. The movie would not have benefited from his inclusion. I need to make another point because I really don't want to end the stream on Tom Bombadil. But I might have to because I can't think of anything else to say today. That was literally the last point on my docket was talking about like things that get cut in adaptations and how superhero films or superhero TV shows don't have the luxury of doing one to one. A lot of that also has to do with their messed up continuity, especially with DC. DC has always had continuity problems. They've been having continuity problems since 1955. Uh, I make a reference to that in the upcoming podcast. Uh, But thank you all for joining me. I hope you had as good a time listening as I had talking. I will see you next week. What's on the docket for next week? Other than the usual, like Dandadan, Moody Moody, and One Piece. I should really try to catch up with Witch Watch, or watch Call of the Night, or maybe I'll do something else. I don't know. I'll